coming up in today's episode.
And so I kind of liken it to a vintner. If a winemaker only made wine and
Hmm.
never learned how to bottle it or label it or what type of people drank it and never created a tasting room, then eventually they would just have barrel upon barrel of wine that went nowhere. And that doesn't really make for a vintner. A
No.
vintner makes wine that people drink, and writers make books that people read.
Welcome to the All Things Books Show, hosted by award-winning best-selling mystery author Dawn Brooks. Publishing has changed beyond recognition in recent years. Join Dawn as she interviews authors, narrators, and many more from across the creative community. This inspiring and informative show is for readers and writers.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the All Things Book Show. And today I've got an author and marketing advisor, really, or a branding advisor called Karen Chase to talk to. So let's bring Karen in. She's joining us all the way from Virginia in the US of A.
Good afternoon
Hi,
in your
Karen.
world.
Yeah.
Hello.
Good morning in your world. So, Karen, before we actually launch into the interview, tell us a little bit about you and your author background, and then also how you got into writing about branding. We'll go into branding in a lot more detail, so just a brief
Okay.
summary will be fine.
Yeah. So I'm actually Canadian, even though I live in the US now in Virginia. And my background is in marketing. I was in marketing and branding right from the beginning with college and everything, and worked in that profession for a long time. And about
Mhm.
10 to 12 years ago, I undertook my first novel. And
Congratulations.
thank you. So I worked on that, another nonfiction book. I had a few published books under my belt, and because of the work I was doing in publishing, I started taking on authors as clients and helping them build their brands as well. And
Okay.
so after a little while, I realized that a lot of the things that I was talking about with authors in the first, I don't know, few weeks we were working together, the first section could probably be distilled down into a book. And rather than paying me several $100s to do that portion, they could do
Mm.
that piece on their own for about 20 US bucks. So that's that's kind of how the book came to be in a nutshell.
Okay. And is it, questions immediately leapt to mind. Is it mainly fiction, non-fiction authors you uh, aiming at, or is it both?
It's both. I've worked with both over the last 6 or 8 years, and having published both as well, both nonfiction and fiction, I think some of the same marketing rules apply to everybody in terms of what they need to do with their author brands.
Mm.
So certainly the nuances are different for each author, but some of the methodology of how you go about building the brand is exactly the same, similar to what I
Mm.
was doing with small companies, actually. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
because actually authors are small companies, aren't they?
small companies,
Even if there's only one person within the organization,
right?
it's still a business.
It is. It is still a small business you're running. Yeah.
Yeah. Going on to your workbook then, and I've got a copy of your workbook in front
There it
of
is.
me. Can we see that? And it's called Brand the Author, Not the Book. And it is all about branding. And obviously I've branded myself over the years, but not in a very formulaic way like your book goes into, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from it myself once I do a deep dive. um, but why? First of all, why is it important? Say I'm an author, and I'm saying I need to write. What do you mean branding? I haven't got time to do branding. And I'm
Yes.
sure you come across that a lot.
Oh,
Uh,
I do. Yeah.
why is it important that an author brands themselves?
Investing in the writing, as I say in the workbook, is just as important as investing in the marketing, because eventually you're going to want readers. And so you hope those readers will find you and remember you and buy not just one book, but the subsequent books that you publish.
Yeah.
And so I kind of liken it to a vintner. If a winemaker only made wine and never learned how to bottle it or label it or what type of people drank it and never created a tasting room, then eventually they would just have barrel upon barrel of wine that went nowhere. And that doesn't really make for a vintner. A vintner makes wine that people drink, and writers make books that people read.
So in other words, those books all need to be recognizable within the brand of that author that's writing them.
Of that author. And that's why it's called Brand the Author, not the book, because book covers change. I mean, we know publishers reissue book covers. You may change publishers. One book to the next looks very different, but overwhelmingly the author has created them. And so there is one through line, I'm sure, through every book you've worked on. I know for me, even though I write fiction and nonfiction, there is a through line that goes through my books, and that voice is mine. And so when a reader lands on my webpage, even if they've only read one book, they should find a commonality or a theme that makes them want to pick up the others.
Okay, so is this for beginner authors in the middle of their journey? Can somebody who's written quite a few books suddenly pick up this workbook and think, I can do this better?
Yes. Yeah. And I think by and large, for the most part, because authors are, despite the fact that we write, we're really bad at making written plans for our marketing.
Yeah.
And that is what this book is really trying to get authors to do, is to create a written plan for their author brand. Like you even mentioned earlier that you've worked on it over the years, but do you have a written plan that says, this is who I am as an author, these are my readers, this is the audience that I'm marketing my books toward? Probably not. Most authors don't.
I'd like to think I've got the latter. I think I know who my readers are and who I'm marketing to, because I spend a lot of money on ads. So I'd like to think of it.
Yeah, you know it more than most, maybe.
Well, not necessarily, because I think there's still, having even just skimmed your book, I think there's still an awful lot that I could learn and pick up and change. So say you're talking to an author and they've got Twitter, they've got Facebook, they've got a website, or not got a website. They've got they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on everything. Where would you begin? Would you try and first of all, would you try and limit the amount of places they're trying to put themselves in, and then would you work on making sure the brand is consistent across those platforms?
So my goal is usually to take a step back and do a little bit of an analysis on all those pieces. So having worked with authors that are multiple books in and worked with new authors, we say, well, where are you in the first place? And we look at all of the places that you are online. And then we ask, like, which ones of those are performing well, but we compare that against, again, the outline of the audience. By having done a deep dive on the target audience that particular author is best suited to communicate with, we can then determine whether or not those social media platforms are really the right place to be. And social media is very different than the website. So I think you've seen in there, I have an image of what I call the author funnel, or the marketing funnel. You know, there's social media, there's speaking engagements, there's a variety of ways, like the little bubbles up on top, the variety of ways that people find out who you are. They might meet you in person, they might read a book, they might land on your Facebook page, but then once they hit those, we kind of drive them down into the funnel, into that website, and into the idea of signing up and giving us your email address. But that website, unlike the social media, I call it your author house because you own it. It's your URL, your website, and even if Facebook dies, your website continues on. So
I've had a few conversations with authors and they say, well, I haven't got around to doing a website, but I'm on Facebook and I can get people to sign up through Facebook. And I think, but actually do you really want to trust Facebook Meta as it is now with
Right.
finding your audience when they'll only show a tiny percentage now of your posts?
And it depends on, again, where your audience is. You know, if
Mm,
for me, with the historical fiction that I do,
mm,
I, having learned a lot about my audience, a large portion of them are on Facebook.
mm,
The ones that are booking my talks and booking my experiences with me, they are on Facebook. And so they share more wildly there and widely there.
yeah.
So it makes sense for me to be there.
Yeah.
TikTok, not really a place for historical novelists necessarily to hang out, but it may be a place to hang out if you're, you know, you've got a self-help book, for instance. Um,
Mm,
it really varies. I've listened to so many podcasts and things where they say, "Oh, just pick a social media account that you love and do something there." Well, that's great, but if you're on Instagram but none of your readers are, then it really is a waste of time. And as you mentioned earlier, writers would rather write. So I would really rather not
yeah.
direct writers to spend all their time on social media, and owning that website and those email addresses that people leave you there. It's ever so much more important because you can communicate directly with the reader that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, with most people like myself, I've got a website. I'm on Facebook mostly and TikTok actually because it does seem to be becoming more diverse in its interests. The book talk
Hmm.
element of TikTok. So we've talked a little bit about branding and branding the author, but only a
Hmm.
teensy tiny bit.
That's a bit.
Um, and you've mentioned a few times about email addresses and such like. Do you also recommend reader magnets, i.e., a free book?
Yes and no. Sometimes the freebies can attract someone who wants the free thing but really doesn't want to communicate with you on an ongoing
Mm,
basis. I think
mm,
you're really better off cultivating a relationship with your audience that is natural to that audience and makes that
mm,
audience trust you. Some of that is really understanding who that audience is. Like, just as a for instance, always funny bringing this up when talking with a Brit and the fact that I'm Canadian, but I do write American Revolutionary fiction. And
wow.
I am a daughter of the American Revolution too. Uh, I can prove lineage back to someone who fought in the revolution. And my
Mm,
membership in that organization not only gave me an automatic audience of who to talk
mm,
to, but it enabled them to trust me. So when I give talks online or in person, I
mm,
bring along a sign up sheet for everybody to sign up for my newsletter. And for the most part, when I have people sign up and subscribe that way, they stay
mm,
around far longer than when I do a giveaway or any
mm,
type of lead. You know, they have a more personal relationship from the interaction, I think is part of it. I've done some giveaways with other authors, other historical novelists. We all got together and have done giveaways, but the attrition after that giveaway is over on my list seems to be greater than after I give a presentation to my intended audience.
And it's actually, I mean, obviously, organic people who join your email list are bound to be more engaged, aren't they, than people who just initially join for a free book. But
I do.
it is about then engaging with people rather than selling to them all the time and becoming friends with them and actually sharing interests. Would you say
Right.
that that's important?
I think so, and being willing to share information too.
Mm,
You know, those presentations I give to the Daughters of the American Revolution, I don't talk about my book. I talk about the history behind the book and some of the little known facts that I uncovered. And
mm,
so their relationship and signing up is for more of that. It's probably not for more of me, if that
yeah.
makes giving them a value add, I would say.
I won't be wanting to listen to a Brit interviewing you then, will they?
Yeah, that'll be a little bit different for them, I'm sure, but
Oh, we acknowledge our past. It wasn't all good. It wasn't all good.
It wasn't all good. No. And I mourned along with all of you when we lost the Queen. So
No, oh, don't. That was so sad. The nation, the whole nation. Actually, we were all surprised at how much. I mean, I've always been a royalist, probably not, but a fan of the Queen. Because of her dedication to duty. So I've always been a fan of hers in particular. But I was amazed at how many people in the country really felt it deeply.
I know.
She's been the stable rock almost throughout our whole lives. I've never known a time without the Queen. So
yeah, my father was on the honor guard in the Royal Canadian Air Force and stood on honor guard when she came to visit back in the 50s.
oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. Despite writing about the revolution, I have a great affinity with Britain.
Yeah, it was sad times, and we don't want to go into our politics at the moment.
No,
certainly not. Right. So back to branding then. So what would you say to an author if I was to say to you, right, I've only got 15 minutes a day to spend on this branding malarkey. What should I do first?
So looking at that marketing funnel, because readers come into your marketing funnel from the top down, you should create from the bottom up. So begin to work on your newsletter and then begin to work on your website and then go up into the marketing funnel. There it is. Yep. So all those little bubbles are the way they find you, and then they drop down into that marketing funnel. So if readers come in from the top down, you should build from the bottom up, because if a reader comes in on Facebook and then they say, oh, I really love her website, I want to go see it, and it's not done, then that's trouble. And if they land on your website and they have no way to give you their information, if they really fall in love with you, then that's trouble too. So you really want to work on it from the bottom up.
So start with the newsletter, then you put book pages, so that's put it at the back of your book.
Book pages are the pages within your website that show where you can buy the book. And if you don't have a book yet, that's totally fine. It just needs to be a book page that says that it's coming. Even if you don't have an agent yet, it's a great place to say that you're looking for representation as well. Or if you intend to self-publish, that if you have a publishing date of where to put that in. But the bottom up, and certainly, I think I talk about this early in the book too, as a division of hours when you are looking at how to spend your time as a writer. At no time should you be only writing, because this is a business. You have other business things to attend to, including the marketing. So when you don't have a book that's coming out anytime soon, spending 75% of your writing life on writing and 25% of that on the marketing for writing is a really good balance. And then during the 9 months, I call it the birthing of the book, during the 9 months that you're going to be trying to launch a book, for the 4 months before and the 4 months after, 75% should be on marketing and only 25 on writing. And then during the month that your book is coming out, 100% on marketing, because you need that PR time, the time to write blogs, the time to write newsletters, the time to communicate with your readers. It's the time to shout, and readers expect you to be shouting. They don't expect you to be hidden away writing.
Okay, well that's good to know. And when you got you mentioned there about 9 months for a book coming out. I'm an indie author, and obviously,
me too.
I publish every 3 to 4 months.
Oh, yeah. So yours is probably distilled down to 9 weeks because you publish so quickly.
Yes. So the time is different, but still the same proportion.
Yeah. So if someone were to say to me, "Oh, I really only have 15 minutes to spend on marketing," then I would assume, based on that 75-25 rule, that they're spending 45 minutes a week on marketing on writing if they have 15 minutes to work on marketing.
Okay, so writing is different for every author.
It is, yeah.
And some of us are full-time authors, and some of us are
Right.
very
Oh,
part-time and trying to hold down a full-time job. Not me, but some authors are.
right.
Now, for those people who only say do have an hour a day when the kids are in bed,
Hmm.
how do they deal with that hour? Should they do 45 minutes writing and 15 minutes doing this other stuff?
If they only have an hour, I kind of like to break it down by the week because it's hard to spin your creative head away and do the checklist that is marketing. So I say, if you've got, let's say you have 4 1-hour stints over the course of a week,
Mm.
spend 3 of those writing and spend 1 of them on marketing so that you really have some dedicated time to be in the marketing head versus the writing head. They're very different heads.
Yes,
Um,
tell me about it.
they're very, very different. So, even then having my own marketing business for all these years, trying to do all the work that needed to be done, there was still the business of getting new clients and things like that that had to be done. And I took those marketing hours for my marketing business and just did them on Wednesday afternoons. I just knew that I could get the tasks done in that one brief stint and then be free the rest of the time to do the creative work.
And it is quite important to find your own creative time, isn't it? I mean, I work
It
best
is.
in the morning. Some people work best in the evening or in creative
Right.
bits. And so I split my when I'm doing marketing and admin and newsletters and all that kind of thing. Always do that in the afternoon because
There you
I
go.
I'm not creative in the afternoon. Whereas
Yeah.
first thing in the morning, boom, I can get going.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's important that people find their own creative time, isn't it? Whatever that is and whenever that is in the day.
Right. And that is part of the workbook portion of the book of mine that you're holding there is to
Yeah,
really consider what times you're going to be spending on it. I mean, we have 112 waking hours during the week.
right.
There's even a little chart in there for you to fill out, like, where do you spend your time outside of writing? And for me, like, I have a contract job that I get paid to do 20
Yeah.
hours a week. So that immediately eliminates that. I like to bike ride, I like to garden. I tend to cook my own meals. So when I take those things, I don't have children, so I don't have that time going to a family.
Or an author who's got a life, unlike some of us.
Right. Right, right. So if I do the math on where I spend my time, and let's say it comes out to 90 hours, that, leaves me 22 hours to write.
Mm.
So where do I spend that time and how do I dedicate it? And part of it is making a written commitment of when you're going to show up to write and when you're going to show up to do your marketing.
So, do you have to be a certain type of person to follow your branding plan? I mean, do you have to be very organized, or are you training even pantsers to be?
Yes, yes. In fact, one of my girlfriends here who helped me with editing the book, she was very much a pantser, and she's like, "Oh, I kind of hate you for
Yeah,
giving me
'cause
the
we go
structure."
through.
Right. She hated me for giving her the structure, and she did ask a valid question. She said, when she gets through all the workbook, if she decides she really doesn't want to handle any of this, what is she going to have to do?
Mm,
And the easy answer is you're going to need to get help because the reality is in the publishing world we live in today, that authors are going to be handling it, even if they're not like us, if they're not independently published and they are traditionally published. Even traditional publishers are handing over all the marketing tasks.
yeah, I've noticed.
So if you want to be read, if you want to grow it into a career of any kind, you will have to spend those hours, unfortunately.
Yeah. Now you mentioned blog posts a bit earlier. Now
Mhm.
I'm sort of probably wrong, but I'm of the opinion that they're a bit dead. And do people really read blog posts anymore when there's so much interactive media going on? What's your take on that?
Right. So the purpose of the blog post has definitely changed. It used to be that it was the magazine that you kind of ran on your website, and newsletters and social media and TikTok and a variety of things seem to have taken that over. However, inside of the Google and the SEO world, the blog serves one very important function, and that it drives traffic to the website when they're looking up keywords for your particular book or genre or topic. Especially important for nonfiction writers to have a blog, because it gives them an opportunity to write articles as much as they want. And then let's say you have a nonfiction book about gardening. If you are focused on regenerative gardening, for instance, a book I'm reading right now by an author is about that topic. But if someone were to type into Google regenerative gardening, and you've got 10 or 15 blogs on the topic on your website, Google is going to pull your blogs as the resource for those people to go to, and therefore they end up on your website as the author. I think that falls in line for fiction too. I mean, if you write sci-fi and it's about a particular, type of interplanetary communication with Mars, for instance, if that's a very common term in your fiction and people are looking for that type of fiction, when they Google it, you will come up if you have more blogs about it. So it really is about SEO and driving traffic. And I kind of look at it as a free space to write, because a lot of online magazines and things like that now, they don't pay writers for articles. So if you're not getting paid for the articles, yes, you need the occasional external article to drive traffic to your own site from those web pages, but this is a great way to write for free and have it lift your website up in terms of being recognized online.
And to do that, you've got to make sure that you tag that blog post correctly and put all the right keywords.
Right. Yeah.
And you think that still works?
Yeah, I think it really does still work. In fact, a girlfriend who's been helping me with this, I always say girlfriend because I have so many people that I work with, and they're no longer vendors anymore. We're all friends, but she was saying they did this even with just a dentist. He was specializing in root canals and he wanted more people to be hitting his website. So they started to write blogs about all the different things associated with root canals. And he went from 50 hits a month to 5,000.
Okay. So,
and it's, let me just add too, a blog is very different than a newsletter. People can sign up for your blog and get that into their email, but your newsletter is where you can run those giveaways. It's where you can notify people of when you are speaking at events. It is a direct communication that comes less frequently than a blog. A newsletter might come once a month, and a blog comes every week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What's your recommendation? Is it weekly, monthly? I mean, some people do it daily, which I think is way too much.
A lot.
I couldn't even write it every day. But I experimented recently, actually, with that. I've got a monthly and a weekly newsletter now, and amazingly, the weekly has far more engagement and clicks monthly, because I guess people are forgetting who I am in the monthly.
Right.
A month is a long time in the modern world. I mean, I still do get good engagement in my monthly, and the list is a lot larger, to be fair. But yeah, percentage-wise, open rates are higher in the weekly, which surprises me. That's surprising.
I'm curious, what open rates are you getting? Do you mind sharing?
I don't mind. I think I get 38% on the weekly.
Okay.
And 35, 33 on the monthly.
That is good. Yeah. I get between 38 and 42, 43 mostly on my newsletter. But I spent a long time cultivating, as we talked about, a very targeted list. So
yeah. When I actually had all organic traffic before I did do a free book, I would have 60-70% open rate.
And right there is your answer to your previous question.
Yeah, but I only have 100 people. 100 very engaged people.
Very engaged and loyal fans are far better than pickle ones.
Yeah, very engaged people, should I say. Yeah, I mean, that is the answer. Obviously, organic traffic is king.
It is.
Definitely. But I just been working on the other types of reader as well, because some of those are engaged as well.
Mhm.
What else? Right, YouTube channel then. I have a YouTube channel, this YouTube show, and a few people
Yeah.
have said to me I should also have a podcast of the YouTube show. I've resisted it because one, there's a fee to having a podcast,
Mhm.
and two, there's a time element to how much I can
The
do.
time. Right.
What would you say as a brander? Would you say stick with what you're doing and what's working, or would you try and get more engagement through both?
I would say again, it depends on your audience. It
Mm,
depends on that specific target audience that you're looking to find
mm,
and connect with, who you want to encourage to connect with you more so they buy your books. And
mm,
if more of them are participating in podcasts, if you look at like podcasts,
mm,
compare other podcasts to yours,
mm,
should you do one, and look at what their readership, their followers are, and look
mm,
at how many hours of their podcast have actually been listened to. You might find that
mm,
they have 500 followers of the podcast, but they only listen on average to 2 hours of podcast total. There aren't enough of your particular readers hanging
mm.
around with podcasts, but there are more on YouTube. And the same could be done for YouTube. So the first thing I would say to you would be to do a study of
Yeah.
even just 3 or 4 similar YouTube and
Mm,
podcast shows like yours,
mm,
uh, with your audience and say, and you could even poll your audience. If you have a big enough newsletter following, I would say use your newsletter. Would you like to see this as a podcast versus YouTube?
mm.
And really engage your audience in helping you answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, this is a fairly new show. I mean, I think we're recording episode 19 now, so obviously, it's not got. Although I've got quite a few followers on my YouTube channel, it's more about. And you're going to think I'm bonkers when I say that I do this more for a hobby than to sell books, but but obviously I am still, people are still getting to know who I am, etc., and who
Right.
other people are, because it's not just about me, this show. This is about um showcasing other authors and trying to give back to the community, because I do quite well, and I just wanted, others to benefit from.
Right. And we get to learn from your expertise as well as those of the people you have online, and so do you. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, some of it honestly, with regard to your brand, is choosing some of, even though it's contrary to what I said earlier, some of it is choosing to do also what brings you joy and makes you happy.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, because it is going to be a lot of time you're dedicating. So if you don't
Yeah.
enjoy it along the way, good heavens, don't do it.
No, exactly. I mean, it is a lot more time consuming than I'd imagined it would be, but I actually do enjoy it. It's something different to writing.
Mhm.
It's what I spend most of my time doing, so I do enjoy it. But this isn't about me. Let's go back to author branding. So you've got, what else would you say is the key, that author? I mean, I think I highly recommend that people pick up a copy of this
Thank you.
brand, branding the author book, and I am going to dedicate some of
Do the
my
workbook yourself.
some of my admin time going through this. Say you get to the stage though where you are, on a serious note, you are really busy. You're someone who's got a lot of books out, marketing, the whole thing is taking over your life. Do
Yeah.
you and they want to look at outsourcing some of
Yes.
this work? How would you recommend that they go about doing that?
So there's a variety of ways to do it depending on your income and what you're willing to spend on it, of
Mm,
course. I always recommend, if you don't have but a few dollars to put toward marketing, that you go to some of the local universities or colleges that are
mm,
teaching branding and design, because those students are usually aching for real world projects to put in a
mm,
portfolio.
mm,
And they have the training and they understand design, but if you've gone through the workbook and you have that brand plan that is the result of the workbook, you can take that to a designer at a brand school
Wow.
and have them begin to help you build the different platform pieces that you need. If you really are, if you, like you said, you've got multiple books under your belt and you're just swamped, and those, especially with traditional publishing, where you might get one book deal and then they want the next one very quickly afterward, and you're up to gear in actual writing. There are a number of author assistants that take on that work, and many of them do have those design skill sets as well as copywriting. They can ghostwrite those blogs for you. They can ghostwrite newsletters. They can compile and mail the newsletters. They can update your newsletter email list after a presentation or a speaking engagement that you might have to go to. During my busiest season after I launched Carrying Independence, my novel, I did work with an author assistant, and it was a blessing to be able to just shove stuff her way and go back to doing the talks and the writing that I needed to do. So, and you know, if you're as popular as Malcolm Gladwell, then you hire your own assistant who works right with you in the office and does the scheduling and everything else. So there's many, many levels in between, and lots of freelancers out there in the world looking for writing and design opportunities.
Right. So, and is that covered in this workbook, that sort of thing?
I do touch on it a little bit about how to get help once you've finished the workbook and you've got your list of things that need to be built. Yeah, I do touch on it a little bit.
I've just picked up something here. It says genres are not helpful. What does that mean?
So genres are really created in order to help publishers and booksellers stick stuff on shelves, but they're not really helpful in terms of branding. They are to some extent, I mean, widely, we have these categories. There's sci-fi versus historical fiction versus romance, that sort of thing. But readers don't always just read one particular genre. They might bounce a little bit in between them. And for writers who, like me, don't always want to write within one genre, we can't just target readers within one genre either. So looking at your genre is not as important to me in terms of an author brand as looking at your topics that you have. So just as a, for instance, Bradley Harper, I mentioned him in the book. He has this wonderful Sherlock Holmes crime thriller set in Victorian England called A Knife in the Fog. And I could say that crime thrillers is his genre, but that's a really wide net to cast when you're looking at the type of audience that's going to pick up his book. But when I say the topics are Sherlock Holmes and Victorian London and female journalists from the time period and Jack the Ripper, now we're talking about specific topics that attract a certain type of reader. And they give Brad the tools in order to be able to find those readers. So talking with Regency England groups or Sherlock Holmes Society, he actually worked with them after he and I did branding together. And he worked with them and they gave him an approval, I don't know what it's called, like an approval sticker that is Sherlock Holmes Society approved. Wow. So, his ability to target those audiences is much better by looking at the topics of his book rather than the all-encompassing genre.
Yeah. So like in one of my cozy mystery series is set on a cruise ship. So immediately you'd suggest cruising.
Oh, yes. Right. Immediately, because then you can start to target people that also look at taking cruises when it comes to your advertising, right? So, but it also is a great place for you to go give talks. If you could get on a speaking circuit on a cruise and go give talks about your cozy mysteries, including the one that happens to take place on a cruise, now you're talking. Now you're going to be connecting directly with an audience that's super engaged and very much wants to hear what you have to say.
Heaven forbid that I'd ruin my cruise by being a speaker.
Oh, having talked with you the last half hour or so, you can't be that bad of a speaker.
That's true. That's true. Maybe I should definitely look into that. There are recruitment agencies, aren't there, for cruise lines? So
Right. And they pay. Imagine getting paid to go talk. And then
yeah,
the rest of your time you're on a cruise boat just writing.
yeah. I really, I
Oh,
should take that more seriously, shouldn't I? I've got 10 books set on a cruise ship. So, mind you,
yeah.
when murders occur on every cruise, they might not actually want me to talk on their cruise ships. I might put people off cruising.
Actually, you might encourage some to take them. Some will take a murder mystery tour, I'm sure, where someone on the ship ends up dead. Yeah, I'm sure they would.
That's true, actually. Yeah, murder mystery tours are big business
Right.
the world over, actually, aren't they? Still,
They are.
certainly in the Western world.
There's something for you to pitch to Princess Cruise Lines.
Yeah, I love Princess as well. Okay. Right. So what about platform tools you mentioned?
So platform tools are all those things. It's social media, it's TikTok, it's all the different items. It's anything in print or online that engages with your audience. So it's even the business card you might hand out should you be on a cruise giving a talk. So it's all those little things, and there are some standards that you absolutely need to have, and of course the website and the newsletter and some things like that are on that standards list. But based on all the work you do on your author brand, on your author message, your target audience, and the way that you want to connect with that audience, I give you an Excel spreadsheet that is a list of all the platform tools. And I don't think you should be checking everything off. I think you should be checking just the things that are going to do the
Yeah.
most for your brand.
Yeah.
And then you go about building those platform tools, like I said, in order from the bottom up of that funnel.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing and interesting talking to you as somebody who's so au fait with marketing. I could go on all day having this chat. It's been a really interesting conversation. So
It has been.
just tell us again before you go. So the title of your fiction book.
It's Carrying Independence. It's about a man who's hired to carry the Declaration of Independence to 7 men who are unable to attend the formal signing of the document.
And I'll put a link to that in the notes below. And your non-fiction works.
So nonfiction is Bonjour 40, a Paris travelogue. I went to Paris for my 40th, and it documents the whole trip. I went for almost 40 days. So, and then I have one other little short story that's fiction called Mary Angela's Kitchen. It's about an Italian widow who bakes bread for the corner restaurant, and her husband, who haunts her kitchen, thinks it's a bad idea. And that comes with recipes. And then, of course, Brand the Author, Not the Book is my last one.
Okay. And what will there be any more of these historical fiction books?
I'm hoping so. I've been
historical fiction, although I write contemporary cozy mysteries.
Oh. Yeah. I've been outlining the second book about the Constitution this time, but that one's taking a bit longer than expected. What with the part-time day job.
Yeah.
As that happens. So, but yes, there will be more.
And your website, Karen?
Yes, it's Karen A. Chase. A is in Allison, because there were several other Karen Chases that I needed to rebrand from. There it is. Yes, just KarenAChase.com, and you can find all the books and all the information.
Okay. And are you still taking on clients for branding authors?
I do take on branding clients. The step one is always now for them to work through that workbook.
Yeah.
It saves them about $1,000 to do that workbook first. And then we work from there. And if my rates are not what they expect, I do refer to people who are more affordable as well.
I mean, that's amazing that you've done that, actually, because a lot of authors who are in this space tend to give you a little snippet of a book with an upsell to trying to get the big bucks out of you, whereas you seem to have done it the other way around. You can get the big bucks, but you've actually you're actually making it much more accessible to every author.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of like you were saying about your YouTube video, I just wanted to, I had so many authors and so many people in my James River Writers literary group here in town really kind of helped me along the way, that, giving authors this leg up for $20, it does save me a lot of time too, quite frankly, because, rather than reiterating all this, they walk away with a written plan in that first chunk. And whether they come to me and work on their design or they go to a branding student or things like that, I think just more authors being empowered, as I say in that book, to be the boss of my author business, the better. We've been in a state of waiting for approval for too long. This, I hope, helps authors become the boss instead.
Yeah, which is what they should be. And
Yeah.
if somebody works through this book on its own, is that enough to launch their business if they were starting out, or would you think that they need a little bit more help?
After they've done the workbook, if you need a little bit more help, it's going to be to actually build those platform tools. This guide will give you a written plan for what you need to build and roughly what colors and style and approach you should be having, but you're probably going to need someone to help you build it if you're not skilled at those things. And that's where those students come in at a very affordable rate if you need to.
And just one last question with regards to branding. If people are writing across genres, do you recommend that they brand themselves differently, as in having pen names, or do you suggest no, by branding the author, you have branded the author and you can write across genres?
You can write across genres and brand the author just once. The only time I really recommend a pen name is you maybe have a very conservative job and you write erotica, or you have drastically different audiences and you've never let the two wander up to this point. I do have a gentleman that I know in the revolutionary world who writes a completely different set of books and has for years. And so to untangle those two audiences and try mesh them together would be too much. But for the most part, if you're starting out and you plan on writing across multiple genres, you will find a through thread in some of the books that you write. And ultimately readers might pick up another one from another side. You never know. So I'd say brand the author once. You have time to manage multiple websites. You need to be writing.
And as you say that, I agree with you there. And as you say, not every reader will stick to one genre anyway. I mean, I read across genres.
Me too.
As I say, I write cozies. I read cozies, obviously. But I love historical fiction and a little bit of light romance, particularly around the Christmas period. I might pick up a few clean romances. But lots of people read different things. It's been an absolute pleasure, Karen.
It has been lovely.
Thank you for joining me all the way from America.
You're welcome. And thank you for hosting me all the way from the UK.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too as well. Thank you so much.
Bye. So that was Karen A. Chase from karenachase.com. And what an interesting interview that was. And if you want to know more about Karen and her work, take a look in the notes below. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want more like this. And thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.